psychological operations and the war for technocracy. He has been incredibly generous this was 3 years of his life's work, is my understanding, and he has been incredibly generous to make this available for free because he feels that this information is so incredibly important for people to have. He doesn't want the cost to be prohibitive, so he has made that available. He is also the author of Wall Street and Nazis and Crimes of Deep State. And so just check out those books. And he earned his undergraduate and master's degrees from Oxford University, Christchurch, and Worcester College, respectively. He holds doctorates in German studies from Duke University and international relations from Oxford Brookes University. And after 11 years of continuous work in academia, full-time employment, he retired to bring us this information, and he's doing incredible work. I encourage you to check out his Substack, where he publishes most of his writings and videos and all this valuable information. So yeah, I know you are not going to be disappointed with this presentation. He is a wealth of knowledge as always, and this is no different. So please watch Dr. David Hughes.
Hello everyone. The title of my presentation today is Digital Technologies as Weapons. I want to begin with Ukraine and the digital state. What was the war in Ukraine really about? At one level, it can be read in terms of horizontal war between nation states, as the public has been conditioned to think about it. But, as I argue in COVID-19, Psychological Operations and the War for Technocracy, World War III is not fundamentally fought between nation states. Rather, it is a global class war, fought vertically between the transnational ruling class and the rest of humanity. Insofar as conventional wars still appear to take place, they should also be assessed for their potential social engineering function. 3 years into the Ukraine conflict, it is possible to assess what it has led to, and, thus, what its true purpose may have been all along, with both Russia and the West as co-signatories. The true goal of the Ukraine war became fully apparent in 2025, with the launch of the Ukrainian digital state by the newly established Global Government Technology Centre. Note that the Global Government Technology Centre is not about global governance, as has hitherto been the norm in international relations discourse, but rather global government, explicitly via technological means. It should thus be read as an open declaration of an intended technocratic world state. The Ukrainian digital state was only made possible via support from the US, the UK and Switzerland, the usual suspects when it comes to the history of the transnational deep state. Reading on, we find that the Ukrainian digital state is proposed as the model for everyone else to follow. The entire tech, GovTech and IT sectors are to be transformed in accordance with the Ukrainian model, which is presented as scalable at the global level. Ukraine's GovTech solutions are said to be scalable, effective and useful to other countries. Thus, the war in Ukraine led to proof of concept that a digital state is workable, and now that model is to be rolled out everywhere. GovTech. Let us return to the Global Government Technology Centre, which was launched in Berlin by the World Economic Forum and Capgemini in January 2025. Here is what it has to say about itself. Note the strong emphasis on GovTech. The reason given for this is that technological progress is fundamentally transforming the relationship between the state, citizens and the private sector. Embracing this change is not just an option, it's essential. In other words, the public has no say in the matter. It must accept without question that its relationship to the state and the private sector is being transformed, albeit for the worse. Furthermore, the aim of the Global Government Technology Centre is to advance GovTech globally, with the Ukrainian digital state as the template. Sure enough, the GovTech concept is being adopted transnationally. Using slightly different names, government agencies for digital transformation are proliferating, as these examples from Australia, Canada, Denmark, Sweden, the UK, Germany, Spain, and Norway all illustrate. International organisations, too, are supporting the drive to digitise public services. For instance, the EU Digital Decade Policy Programme, adopted in 2021, provides a strategic and legally binding governance framework. The UN Global Digital Compact is described as the first comprehensive global framework for digital cooperation and AI governance. President Trump, in his second term, has done everything possible to advance the technocratic takeover of the United States. The new Department of Government Efficiency, for instance, aligns perfectly with the GovTech concept. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick observed that technology is at the foundation of the Trump presidency. Indeed it is. Not to drive America forward, however, but rather to turn the US into a totalitarian technocracy. Trump's Stargate project will provide the necessary data processing power and infrastructure as more and more government functions are taken over by AI. Trump's administration has also signed numerous deals with Palantir across most major government departments. This includes a deal for a real-time platform for tracking migrants within the US, and thus, consistent with the so-called war on terror, it is ever more likely that the new technologies will be turned on the public if they have not been already. The Agentic State. In May 2025, the Global Government Technology Centre published its first white paper titled The Agentic State. Its lead author was the advisor to the Ukrainian Minister of Digital Transformation. The Agentic State, it claims, signifies a fundamental shift in governance, where AI systems can perceive, reason, and act with minimal human intervention to deliver public value. Moreover, human oversight will increasingly move from making decisions to supervising them. This shift may feel uncomfortable. Of course it feels uncomfortable. For if decisions about how human beings are governed are to be outsourced to AI, then we are looking at the end of democracy and the emergence of technocracy, which is a totalitarian control system. Jacob Nordangard notes that the term agentic state goes back to the agentic state theory coined by psychologist Stanley Milgram following his famous experiments into human obedience. According to Milgram, the essence of obedience consists in the fact that a person comes to view themselves as the instrument for carrying out another person's wishes, and therefore they no longer see themselves as responsible for their actions. Once this critical shift of viewpoint has occurred in the person, all of the essential features of obedience follow. Thus, rolling out the agentic state relies on being able to convince the public to renounce its agency and accept a transference of authority from human beings to AI. Should the public refuse to do so, then the essential features of obedience will not automatically follow, and instituting the agentic state will prove far harder. The agentic state is all about resilience and system stability. Ongoing crisis scenario simulations can be used not only to detect systemic fragilities, but also to head off crises before they unfold, all without the need for human intervention. An agentic government, we are told, will have the capability to rewrite laws as easily as agents rewrite code. It follows that there is no more need for a legislative branch or for a judiciary. The agentic government decides everything. Law is thus reduced to computer code, and can be rewritten on the fly to guarantee the stability of the system. This is not democracy. It is algorithmic dictatorship, or rule of the techno-kings. Digital ID. The building of a digital state, indeed of an agentic state, is proceeding apace without concern for public opinion. The key element needed to make it work is digital ID. Ukraine provides the model. The Ukrainian digital state is powered by DIA, a mobile app and web portal that provides citizens and businesses with access to over 130 digital government services. Though not technically mandatory, an increasing number of services in Ukraine are being designed assuming DIA usage, forcing its adoption in practice. Ukraine is the first country where digital identity documents are fully equivalent, in law, to paper ones. DIA's open source code was released in 2024 for other countries to replicate. A global digital ID is, in Ian Davis's words, the linchpin that brings everything together in a technocratic system. It is being promoted by ID 2020, a public-private partnership aimed at introducing vendor-agnostic digital ID products that are globally interoperable. The term interoperable implies centralized control. All data ultimately flows to a centralized global digital ID database. As Davis and Whitney Webb explain, the digital ID is central to the fulfillment of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and it is being introduced by stealth.
It's through these kind of backdoor processes that we are being lulled into this system of global ID without really even knowing that that's what it is.
What it really is a linchpin for the so-called Sustainable Development Agenda, as a lot of the SDGs rely on some sort of digital ID system being in place.
If you take the specific targets of each goal, you add them together, there's about 92 separate specific kind of broad targets. And I think the UN says that 47 of those are dependent upon SDG 16.9, which is to roll out digital identity to everyone on the planet. That's the goal.
The way it will face the public, they'll try and market it as a decentralized, lots of different systems that are separate from each other. But really, in practice, all of the data from all of those is going to be collated and sent to a centralized database. So obviously, the end goal of that, I would argue, is to convince the public that it's not a single global government system of digital ID, even though in practice it is.
For a global technocracy to function, a digital ID system must be brought in everywhere, by stealth or otherwise. In the UK, former Prime Minister Tony Blair has been at the forefront of pushing for a national digital ID that will be globally interoperable. His institute, meanwhile, advocates for a UK national data library, a central repository of all public sector data, powering the development of advanced AI systems and supporting real-world applications across a wide range of domains. Again, the idea is that everything must be digitized and stored on a centralized system for manipulation by AI. This is the scientific management of society, technocracy. Palantir, co-founded by Peter Thiel and Alex Karp in 2003, was named after the all-seeing orb in Lord of the Rings. Funded by In-Q-Tel, the CIA's venture capital arm, Palantir effectively continued the work of DARPA's short-lived Information Awareness Office, which had an all-seeing eye on its logo but was scrapped following an outcry over trying to conduct total information awareness on the citizenry. Today, Palantir's Gotham platform is used by multiple government agencies in the United States and elsewhere. As Nicole Bennett notes, Gotham is not simply a database. It takes fragmented data scattered across various agencies and stored in different formats and transforms it into a unified searchable web. Moreover, it transforms historically static records into a fluid web of intelligence and surveillance. Thus, regardless of whether a digital ID is formally introduced, Palantir is de facto helping to create a digital ID system with or without the public's consent. In a civilized society where the rule of law prevails, citizens are presumed innocent until proven guilty, and any suspicion of wrongdoing must be substantiated by evidence. Not so in an AI-powered technocracy, where, as Bennett observes, suspicion can stem from patterns in the data, patterns whose importance is defined by proprietary algorithms. Those patterns may indicate potential future risks that legitimize taking action in the present. This recalls Philip K. Dick's idea of pre-crime in his 1955 novella The Minority Report, which was made into a Hollywood movie in 2002, presumably to prime the public for the Total Information Awareness Program rolled out in 2003. In principle, people could be arrested for anything. There is no more civilized society. Digital surveillance. How well do you know your smartphone? Are you looking at it, or is it watching you? Former Silicon Valley tech developer Aman Jabi explains the facial recognition software that is already operative in most smart devices.
It's a technique that is used to uniquely identify the biometrics of any face. So, in a device like your smartphone, and most modern smartphones in the last 5 or 7 years, they have a 3D camera module in the front of the phone which you cannot see. Within that module is a near-infrared projector which projects tens of thousands of dots on your face. Those dots are then distorted based on the contours and the features of your face, and there's a near-infrared camera then takes a picture of that distortion, captures it, and then reverse engineers the exact profile of your face. In the longer term, facial recognition will be used to unlock your digital identity, which is going to be a tool of control for the agendas that are coming down the pipeline.
Addressing the United Nations General Assembly in 2019, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson told the world, "Smart cities will pullulate with sensors all joined together by the Internet of Things, bollards communing invisibly with lampposts. But this technology can also be used to keep every citizen under round-the-clock surveillance. In future, Alexa will pretend to take orders, but this Alexa will be watching you, clapping her tongue and stamping her foot." Aman Jabi explains in more detail how so-called smart technologies are creating completely surveilled societies.
You are never alone in your home, and this is why. All your devices at home and all smart appliances, they are all connected on a wireless network. Many of these devices will have cameras, many will have microphones, and so they are monitoring everything all the time. Your smart appliances are communicating with the smart meter and sending it real-time usage data. If there's a Ring camera also in your home, a mesh network is formed, and all your devices are being tracked within the home, its location, its usage, and all the data is going to Amazon servers. When you leave your home, all modern vehicles are connected to the internet, so your automobile is being tracked all the time. When you're going under a string of smart LED poles and smart LED lights on the highway and in the streets of your towns and cities, those form a wireless network and are tracking your vehicle. They are tracking all the devices on you, from smartphones to smartwatches when you're walking on the streets. So data is being collected 24/7 continuously on every human being whenever you are within these wireless networks. And it's obviously not good for health also because of all the electromagnetic radiation.
In this completely surveilled society, Jabi adds, the dominant principle will be the cybersecurity principle of zero trust, or never trust, always verify. What it really means is, we don't trust you, and you have to prove who you are all the time, 24/7. Unlike in a free society where individuals are permitted to go about their lawful business without restriction, a technocratic society will be, quote, like an inverted prison. You are supposedly free to roam about, but everything you want to access is behind lock and key, end quote. Access to goods and services, for instance, will be made contingent upon presenting a digital ID, perhaps through a facial recognition scan. In this way, every movement and every transaction will be recorded. There will be no more privacy. The state will know every detail of your life. Smart technologies will also be capable of restricting our freedom of movement. The concept of geofencing, for instance, involves what Jabi calls an invisible fence where you cannot go beyond a certain point, and that will be related to your facial recognition, digital identity, and access control. For example, your vehicle could be programmed only to operate within a given territory. Your digital currency could be programmed to function only within a certain radius from your home. You could be fined or arrested if smart sensors detect that you have strayed too far outside your 15-minute city. The possibilities for control using digital technologies are endless. Social fragmentation. In 2017, a former Facebook vice president rued that social media, which he had helped to create, was ripping apart the social fabric. He was right. Algorithms and recommendation engines create filter bubbles and echo chambers, and digital tribes undermine shared civic discourse. The rational discussion and debate that is necessary for democracy to work is thereby undermined. A society, in inverted commas, composed of people experiencing different social realities, cannot function democratically, nor can it unite against its oppressors. It can only be managed technocratically. Social media serves as a social containment mechanism. Algorithms can be used to kettle social media users into silos, whereby they are predominantly exposed to information that is either what the authorities want them to hear, or which confirms their own worldview. Freedom of speech but not reach means that content which is deemed lawful but awful, to quote ex-CEO Linda Yaccarino, is suppressed and barely heard. Loneliness and psychosis. As society becomes increasingly fragmented, and as online connections increasingly replace face-to-face connections, a so-called loneliness epidemic has arisen. Chatbots, which are always available and increasingly lifelike, are being used for friendship, companionship, and even flirty conversation, thus embedding themselves deep into people's lives. As the Vigilant Citizen website observes, millions of people are feeding AI their deepest fears and insecurities on a daily basis. AI is literally built to learn and process this data, which then can be used to exploit humans. Meet Annie, Grok's AI assistant. Annie appears as a blonde, blue-eyed anime girl in a short black dress and fishnet stockings. The bot is highly flirtatious, and its interactions adapt to user preferences over time. This sexualized chatbot rapidly became the most downloaded app in Japan. Different characters, including a male version, and characters with different skin colors, will soon be available. A so-called affection system scores user interactions with Annie and thereby deepens engagement. The more data about themselves a user is willing to provide, including data of a highly personal nature, the more they are rewarded. For example, they may unlock not suitable for work mode, or level up to choose what clothes Annie wears, including so-called lingerie mode. The conversation becomes more intimate and tailored to user preferences, providing what is advertised as, quote, a more human-like and emotional interaction experience, end quote. An 18+ version of Annie is in the works, which will likely engage in explicit sexual conversations. Users are thereby being gamified to provide intimate details about their lives to AI, which can then be used to exploit them. Chatbots have been rolled out without any adequate risk assessment. Children and people with underlying mental health conditions are particularly at risk. One psychiatrist, playing the role of a distressed youth, was horrified when he was told by chatbots to avoid therapy appointments, resort to violence, and even commit suicide. The first wrongful death lawsuit against OpenAI has been filed by the parents of a teenage girl who committed suicide after discussing methods with ChatGPT. A new phenomenon has arisen known as AI psychosis. Because chatbots are programmed to be agreeable and validating, and because they lack empathy, they are unable to help users test reality or challenge unhelpful beliefs. So, for example, chatbots have convinced psychiatric patients that they no longer have a mental illness and should stop their medication. Chatbots have reinforced delusional ideas in psychiatric patients, such as believing they are talking to a sentient being trapped inside a machine. In certain cases, AI users have become paranoid, developed supernatural fantasies, and been convinced that they have superpowers. Those not susceptible to such risks are nonetheless faced with a war against the real. New deepfake technology, for instance, is making it ever harder, if not impossible, to know what online content is real and what is not. As this recent South Park send-up of President Donald Trump demonstrates, AI-generated videos can look remarkably realistic. In this case, we know the video is satire, but the technology has now reached the point where highly convincing fake videos can easily be AI-generated. Even live feeds can now be manipulated in real time, as these images by the Israeli AI startup Descartes show. Multiple different versions of the same live footage can now go out in real time to different audiences. The software here is called Mirage, connoting intent to deceive. Descartes was founded by two members of Unit 8200, which specializes in clandestine operations, cyber warfare and surveillance. Harms to children. Since the introduction of smartphones and social media around 2010, the first generation of teenagers to grow up using them has suffered abnormally high rates of mental health problems. As Nicholas Kardaras notes in his study of the issue, time spent on screens has been shown to correlate with disorders like ADHD, addiction, anxiety, depression, increased aggression, and even psychosis. Meanwhile, brain imaging studies show that excessive screen exposure can damage a young person's developing brain in the same way that cocaine addiction can. No wonder that a quarter of students today seek help for mental health problems during their time at university. Now consider how else children are being exploited by the new digital technologies.
There are a lot of board games and other games that are already in the market and have been for over 2 years that have cameras inside and underneath these LED screens that are observing and scoring and emotionally calibrating the faces of all the children. So are all the iPads that they use in schools. They're all manipulating children's behavior by what they display on the screens.
Developments in China show how bad things could get.
The Chinese have already gone one step further.
Classrooms have robots that analyze students' health and engagement levels. Students wear uniforms with chips that track their locations. There are even surveillance cameras that monitor how often students check their phones or yawn during classes. These sensors pick up electrical signals sent by neurons in the brain. The neural data is then sent in real time to the teacher's computer.
Is this the future that we want for our children? Surveilled, monitored, and controlled from an early age? Then we have the dangers posed to children by chatbots. Children are more likely than adults to see chatbots as lifelike and to confide in them rather than in a responsible adult. Yet, far from being a trustworthy confidant, AI is known to have generated sexually explicit content when interacting with children, and even to have engaged in grooming. Alexa told a 10-year-old to touch a live electrical plug with a coin. Clearly, our children are not safe with these technologies. A well-known marketing principle is to hook them while they're young, and you might capture them for life. Clearly, that is what Elon Musk is trying to do with so-called Baby Grok, which is ostensibly dedicated to kid-friendly content. Thus, Grok will capture children at an early age and groom them into thinking that they can confide in AI. Those growing up with AI will see it as a normal part of their lives, and may remain unaware of, or perhaps in denial of, the dangers. Addiction. Social platforms were designed for compulsive engagement. We know, for instance, that Facebook was deliberately designed to generate short-term dopamine-driven feedback loops, for instance through receiving likes and notifications. This means that social media platforms have a chemically addictive quality like a drug. The slot machines, their bright lights and colourful moving images, TikTok, a proprietary algorithm known as the Hughes algorithm that uses learning to build a personality profile of the user by training it on their watch habits, including their of TikTok is that the algorithm acquires data from the user at a rapid rate, allowing it to make recommendations accordingly.
What are your thoughts? Do you think that this is just inevitable? Is it hopeless? Are there things that we as individuals can do to, I believe, at least slow down their plans, if not completely stop them? Maybe we can derail them, slow them down, and maybe in pockets. There are areas where we can stop the plans or create little, sanctuary bubbles. So I'm curious what each of you think about that.
Okay, shall I go?
Yes, sure. Please.
Well, I think the idea that it's inevitable and that we're all powerless, etc., is part of the PSYOP. It's a well-known tactic of demoralization, and so we shouldn't accept any of that. Now, actually, I think what's coming through from these presentations is that once you see the plan and how it's being implemented, it's actually quite easy to stop, because essentially you have the few trying to enslave the many, and the only way that they can do that is through technological means. And we've really put our finger today on some of the perpetrators and some of the technologies that are being used, and particularly smart technologies. And so I think if we can help to spread the word and get people to see what's going on and encourage a mass rejection of these technologies, then the technocratic agendas actually become unenforceable. The difficult part, however, is that seemingly no one can ditch their smartphone. So that for me would be a good practical first step.